It's another beautiful evening. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to Man Up, Kikao cha Wanaume. This is where we sit down as men and talk about issues that are affecting the men in the society today and what solutions can we come up with. This evening we want to talk about the boy child. Somebody said the only raw material that God has to make men is boys. And so if you sort out the boys, you'll have wanaume wa maana. If you don't sort out the boy, then when they grow up, they become some of the men who destabilize the society with all sorts of evil. So this evening, we want to talk about empowering the boy child. I have got my live studio audience with me this evening. Wanaume, Bwana asifiwe. Amen. Muko wazima? Awesome. We also have two amazing guests joining us. I've got lawyer and life coach Daniel Muliro. Daniel, how are you doing? Karibu sana.
Asante.
It's good to have you.
Good to be here.
We also have a certified mentor, boyman advocate, social change and marriage counselor, Chris Otieno. Chris, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
You are the right man to be here, boyman advocate.
Thank you for having me.
Karibuni sana. I'm curious, even as we get into this conversation. Let me begin this conversation today by talking to the studio audience. Because we hear so many times about the girl child has been over-empowered and the boy child has not been empowered. Do you think that statement is true? Has the boy child, from your perspective, been neglected and not been empowered?
It is true that ladies have been empowered and there is that gap. Largely it's because of, I would say it's because of mistreatment of the ladies, and then this empowerment of the ladies came so powerful, and then the man has been left out.
Okay.
And then you see it, instead of it working for good, it has turned for evil, because all said and done, man is the head. Yeah. So no matter, we can say we are going to empower ladies, but that's not the order. Now, because it's a Christian setup, maybe we would say man is the head. The wife came from the man. Yeah, we can't have other way. So I would say it's true. It's true that women have been empowered, and then we have trivialized the place of the man, which is causing more harm than good outside.
Another comment?
I've heard our man here saying that men are the raw material, right? So it means that if men are the raw material, then the material that is used to make the women comes from the men, okay? Now, if men have the raw material, then if you think men are mistreating women, then the solution is to work on the man. You know, you don't treat symptoms and signs, okay? So when you assume the man and start working on the woman who is being mistreated, she will still be mistreated even after helping her, because the mistreater is still there. Okay? So the solution is still on the man. If the man is oppressing, I believe you're supposed to be working on the man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that he will stop oppressing and start doing what? Helping.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting thought I always have when we get into this conversation about the girl child being empowered at the expense of the boy child. And my question always is, who is this who is empowering the girl child and neglecting the boy child?
Yes.
Who is it?
I think it starts at various levels, from the government level, from various institutions to the family level.
Yes.
So the neglect always starts at the family level.
By who?
By mostly the parents and the relatives.
Which parent? The dad or the mom? I'm going somewhere with this trail of thought.
Most of the time is the father.
So then, in essence, we are saying we should not say the boy child has been neglected. We should say we have neglected ourselves.
And to give more credence to that line of thought, there have been so many research, but mostly in America, that say that single parent families which have a single mother, usually the children always end up being dysfunctional or some form of dysfunctionality. But single father families, where the mother is not in the picture, the children always end up to being resourceful people in the society. So, I mean, it leads to the thoughts of my brother here, that it is always more important
to empower the man.
To empower.
Okay.
But of course not at the expense of the woman. But if you are to choose, I'm not saying that you have to choose, but if you are to choose, you'd put more emphasis on the male figures. And in turn, once the man is empowered, most of the time the society is empowered.
Okay. So is this a theory or a belief that we have, or is it actually what you see on the ground? Because this is in line with what you do. Is the boy child truly neglected, or is it just something that we love saying?
There are so many faces that you can look at this from. But the groundbreaking notion is that, yes, the boy child has been neglected by the older boys. You get it? Let's go to the family dynamics. I am a father, I've got a daughter, and I've got a son. Automatically, because of my background and my beliefs that have been instilled in me, is that my son can fend for himself because he's man enough. He's man. But my girl will need my support, a lot of push from me. That is one facet. The next facet is fatherlessness. If you grow up in a family where there is no father, the woman will feel the gap of the father. And she'll be more inclined towards empowering her daughter not to be in a similar position as she is. So what does that entail? It means empowering her daughter economically, academically, socially. Mention any line of empowerment, she will do it for her daughter. When the lady is all grown up, she has the skills to navigate through the world that is ahead of us, ahead of her. Why? Because she has the skills. These has been passed over to her. But the boy child, you will go out and grow by default. That is a neglect. Because we need people to educate them, to explain to them, to demonstrate to them, and teach them what positive masculinity is all about. What is required of a man? What do we define you as a man? And what is the weight that you carry in your definition as a man? Because that is a lot. Not only the God-given rulership and leadership, there is more that comes with that. So it is from which phase you think about, but from all these phases, it is fact that the boy child has been neglected by the boys ahead of them. Yes.
I like what he's saying, because then it means we are the problem, but yet at the same time we are the solution. Because we can't keep talking about the empowerment of the girl child, because I believe the empowerment of the girl child is necessary. But now we also need to start talking about empowering of the boy child, because the boys we didn't empower have become men, and we have seen the gaps in their lives. And I think it's time for us to go to the drawing board. But my question is, where then do we begin?
92% confirmed that, according to them, the boy child has been neglected. We have to start at the basic unit level of society, which is the family. I mean, even the Constitution recognizes the family as the basic unity of society. So that is where we start, according to me. Maybe Chris can say more about, but my feeling is we start with the family.
And I think that's a challenge for a lot of men, because most of the time we are out there trying to put two and two together to be able to provide for our families. And sometimes we end up not being there because we are trying to give them a future, so to speak. But then it seems to work against us. And finding that balance for a good number of men is an issue. Otherwise, we wouldn't have some of the problems we are having today.
That is very true. When you look at the connection between a mother and a son, or a mother and a daughter, first is 9 months in the womb. Automatic connection. When it's given birth to, the next connection is breastfeeding and nurturing. And while she doing that, just like you rightfully said, I am out there fending.
Looking for the diapers.
Looking for the diapers. And they are not there, I pay for it. And then when I get back, I'm exhausted. There is no time. I have very little time to spend with the newborn. And the bonding element here, the basis of bonding here would be presence. My presence. So you'll find that even as a child grows up, and because of my business, he might end up calling me uncle. Because I'm not there. In actual sense, I am the father, but I'm not there.
Ule uncle kujaga usiku.
Ule uncle kujaga usiku. So then it becomes another push to us. Create time. And we're not talking about just time. We're talking about quality time.
Quality time.
What are these elements of quality time? Teach your son how to ride a bike. Let him fall. Let him wake up. Show him how to nurse the wounds. Right? Show him how to ride that bike. That creates a connection. And it becomes our next age.
Yeah.
Teach him how to drive. Don't go with an automatic vehicle. Go manual. Because that will encourage conversation between you and him. And that opens up the lines of communication between the two of you. And that is a great plus in bringing the two of you guys together. You begin to understand, who is my son? What is my son career-wise? Why is my son? When you start answering these questions, then you find that that closeness between you and your son, the gap starts becoming small and small and small. And as it becomes small, you will pass in a lot of things naturally because of that affinity for them.
I'm just curious, listening to what Chris is saying, because we are looking at this thing from the family perspective. And so every father, every older brother has a responsibility. Could it be that we have not done much because as we keep having these conversations, we are always waiting for somebody to come and empower the boy child, and we've never looked at it from the perspective that that person should actually be me. So no one is taking responsibility, or let me put it this way, very few are taking the responsibility.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, in my life, I can tell you, there are very few people who have approached me. I'm 30 years old, okay?
Yeah.
I'm a professional.
Yes.
Okay? But, I mean, I can't say anyone has approached me saying, Daniel, I'm seeing you are on this path as a Christian, as a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, what help do you need from me in terms of navigating this lifestyle? You are about to maybe start a family in the next few years.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the challenges you're going through? Very few discussions of that sort. No one has ever approached me. But also, you know, it goes the other way around. I talked to Chris earlier this morning, and we were discussing. I don't remember any time, me as a man, approaching another man, asking them, you know, I'm on this path.
Yes.
I mean, how did you get there, Pastor James?
Yes.
Tell me one of few things. It is not there.
It's not there. It's not common.
It's very common.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think, was it the last episode or the episode before, we were talking about men and friendships. Yes. And we were saying how as men, we don't develop deep relationships to build each other up. Our relationships are around nyama choma.
Yeah, football.
And maandamano.
Football. And cars.
Yes, and cars. And that's it. So do we need to go back to the drawing board and look at how we relate one to another so that we also know how to relate to our sons and to raise them up to be the men they ought to be?
We need to do a lot about relationships because one of the battles that we will battle with when we are grown-ups is how to relate. And relationships here is not just man-woman, man-man. It's even how to relate with your job, with your car, with what you do, spiritually, economically, socially. All these are relationship networks.
Okay.
So how do I create a formidable working social network that is beneficial to both me and the person or the item that I'm relating with? So the basic of relationship here is the older men. The older men, us. I don't want to say about men, us, or even me.
Yes.
I need to take it upon myself to see that my son is able to navigate through relationships. Men like our audience, or men who are younger than me, how do I stand with them and help them to navigate through the battles that I am fighting? If I am successful, wacha nijitume kuongelesha wale men like me who are coming up, that my path to success entailed 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And this is how I made it to the forefront. If I don't share that, then I will die full with knowledge not shared.
Yes.
And the principle for a man should be, when I die, I should die empty. Everything I have with me, I have shared with the next person who's going to replace me. Because the succession in this world, everybody, each and every one of us, to include myself, will be replaced. Do I want to invest in a future where there's no knowledge? I went with my knowledge.
Yeah.
No, I should invest in my son, have mentorship sessions, have men groups, to active working groups to speak to them and pass this knowledge, because that creates another chain that is very long going and helps so many people. Yes.
I think there's something we had mentioned earlier, which I think is also important, that as men, I don't know whether it's our ego or this competitiveness we have within us, it is very hard for us to ask for help. You know, everybody wants to be a self-made millionaire. Yes. I did it on my own. I did it myself. You know, you put yourself up there. And in the midst of that, a lot of crashes are happening. People's lives are being destroyed. And I think it calls for a place of humility to say, I don't know, teach me. But are many of us ready to humble ourselves?
To be very honest, we are not at that space.
Yeah.
I'd give you an example of myself. I have a good relationship with my mother, okay? So there's something I was going through in the recent past.
Yeah.
So it was really disturbing my mind. So in my mind, I thought my mother is the person I want to share this with. But something happened that I ended up being with my father in the sitting room.
Yes.
So, of course, he asked me, you don't look okay.
Because
what is happening? So we had a discussion. And interestingly, I mean, that discussion was so meaningful in my life.
Wow.
The words that, I mean, the discussion that we had was so impactful. It really transformed the situation. So, I mean, it speaks to the impact that you can have, a man can have. I thought that maybe sharing with my mother, it will help. But what I needed was words from
your dad.
From my dad. And you see, those words have really been encouraging in that particular phase. Yeah, so we need to, I mean, lower our egos.
Yes.
Step into humility, and we will get good results from it.
Okay.
But humility is closely intertwined with the one thing that God put in us. That we are rulers, we are leaders, and that brings the element of a warrior. What do you associate a warrior with? A winner, an automatic winner.
Yeah.
Right from dressing, right from the way they conduct themselves, right from... When you show a slight sign of weakness, which here to us men is humility, then I'm viewed as weak. Look at the way Spartans used to select their warriors those early days.
Yes.
A Spartan warrior is a man selected from birth. You get born, they look at you physically, they select you. Any form of deformity means you are weak. And that's what has been carried over time. That a man is supposed to be strong, a man is supposed to be, you know, they even tell us, stereotype us, a man is not supposed to cry. But we have tear glands. Now, uko na tear glands. Biologically, uko na tear glands. I mean, what are they for? It means we are supposed to cry. So let's show emotions. And I'll give you a situation like my brother has given. I love that, and I use that a lot, right? When my father passed away, I vowed in that burial procession, my son will not see me cry. Can you imagine?
Oh, really?
And I came to realize that was a wrong thing. And I even said, I'll shield my son from seeing my father. I came to realize it was wrong. We got the evening, he was insistent, I want to see my grandfather.
Yes.
And I want to see him now. And when I took him to see the corpse of my dad, I was shocked. He stayed at the coffin like this for 30 minutes without moving. I'm a man, strong. But I was afraid of going next to that coffin. Because the reality to me was, he's gone. But my son had not caught that reality. That once you pass away,
done.
You are done. So even the reality is that us not sharing is harming us, needs to be shared with our boys, with our sons, with the young ones around us, for them to understand that people can spearhead that. It is us who have lived the period that they are living.
Yes.
Only us who can share that and share it so passionately. And when we do that, they realize women are strong because they share. There's power in sharing.
You know, I was hanging out with a pastor this morning, and there's a statement he said that was so powerful. He said, I was having conversations with an older apostle, and he looked at me and he told me, young man, where you're running to is where I am coming from.
Wow.
Wacha haraka. Yes. Nimetoka huko. Huko unakimbilia? Ndio nimetoka. Kaa chini nikuambie nini utapata huko mbele. Wacha haraka. And I thought that's such a powerful statement. There's something you said earlier when we were preparing for the show about culture and how some of our cultures also have a role to play in this conversation that we're having. We'll talk about that in a bit. You're watching Man Up tonight. We are talking about the empowerment of the boy child. And we are saying we are the ones who created the gap. We are the ones to mend the gap. Mzae, what's the relationship like with your son? I remember over Father's Day, one of the local media houses got some men together and they told them to call their dads and to tell their dads, I love you. It is the most hilarious thing you will ever see. Oh, those words coming from a man to another man are the hardest because our relationships are not that tight. There's one guy who said, Daddy, kuna watu hapa wameniambia nikwambie. So, if you are a father, what kind of a relationship are you having with your son? Because from what we are discussing this evening, empowerment begins in the home. Before we look at the NGOs and the government, Serikali's idea, it has to begin at home. Your thoughts and comments are welcome. 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786316316. Kama kawaida, 5 minutes. Ukunywe maji na urudi for part 2 of this amazing discussion. Keep it Family TV.
Tomorrow, on This Is My Story, he left home in the company of his friends to play in the fields.
Mi nikienda home, train ikakuwa inakuja lakini inarudi na nyuma na mi sikuwa naiona, ilikuwa imevuta makontena. Sasa mi nikienda kuvuka kwa hiyo mawe nikaanguka.
An accident that robbed Duncan all his 4 limbs. Catch This Is My Story tomorrow at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Man Up. Tonight we are talking about the empowerment of the boy child. I'm hanging out with Daniel Muliro and Chris Otieno. We also have our live studio audience. In fact, let's get to our audience and take some questions. You can say your name and ask your question.
I would like to ask, is it really that we are blaming the traditional man for the boy child feeling neglected? And in real sense, in real sense, we can't say that the traditional man was neglected before. But right now, we have a new problem that has come up. Can we say it's the traditional man who created this problem? And maybe is it the modern man feeling less empowered because he feels like the modern woman would rule over him?
I would think from many perspectives. Number one, if we say the mistake is the traditional man, but the modern man has lost the traits of the tradition.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
What are we saying? Was the traditional man empowered if we don't have it? If he passed it over to us, if he empowered us the knowledge of our traditions, then we would be stronger. Right? So this gradual, genealogical, age-set neglect of the important traits that need to be passed out, to be passed over, or the baton handed over to the next person, is what has created where we are in right now. The passivity of the man, the passivity of the man is what has put us where we are. If Adam rose up and told Eve, don't eat that fruit because God Almighty said we should not eat it, we don't know where we would be. We know where we are because of his passivity.
Yes.
Isn't it? And there are many other forms of passivity where men have naturally or just chosen to relax because they don't want trouble. Particularly the married men. I don't want trouble with my wife, so I'll let that pass. But actually, you need to wake up and tell wife, excuse me, wife, please, I think or I recommend or I would like this to be done in this way.
It's because of some statements we have had and we keep being told. When mama is happy, everybody is happy. So we want to make mama happy.
The women will want to do something known as, I don't have the man who meets my requirement. If I have a son, I will make this son into what I want him.
And I've already started seeing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll tell you in my mentorship, 102% of my clients are women bringing children, the boys, to be mentored. 102%. Hata naongezea 2%.
Well, men,
because of the zeal. Because of the zeal the ladies have.
Wow.
Yeah, and they will come and discuss with you and tell you, I see some shortness in my son, in 1, 2, very specific.
Very specific.
You go to the men. Some of them are different, very strong, and can push this. But majority of them will tell you, ask you, how was the session? Good. Peripheral discussion, end of the story. The lady will tell you, what was good? Break it down for me. The having more details is having information.
Yes.
And having information
is being empowered.
Exactly. You are?
I think that masculinity is what has brought about that feel of neglect. I think it's just the modern man screaming for attention, which is now lacking, which the modern woman has received.
I think there are two aspects to what you've said. Because there's the what people call toxic masculinity.
There you go. You take the initiative and you sustain it. And sustain it and sustain it. The only thing and the only time men will show their emotion, when we shall show our emotion fully, football.
Oh my goodness.
I will show you exactly that I can cry and you will not mind that. But look at these ladies. They can cry from their heart and say, we need to fill up this cup. But for us men, put ourselves in that position, that you are the guys in that camp and looking at, there's no future. There's nothing more to do. Majority of us, part of us, would go into depression. With the only solution being, if one of us took initiative and some of us surrender to the fact that this is the way out and we sustain it progressively, then we would be in a much, much better place. Okay. Or if another man saw it somewhere that I've heard some of my men speak somewhere and they need to be empowered because I've got an economical muscle. Let me go and empower them. It's that difficult. And you've read stories in the print media and even here of ladies crying out for help, and that help comes massively, comes in abundance and makes a difference in their life.
There's something the gentleman said when we began the show that I thought was very interesting about the rider. Yeah? Yes. And my assumption is the rider is a guy.
Yes, of course, yes.
The rider is a guy.
Yes.
You know, so I'm just wondering, is it also that we don't value each other? We would rather look good and help that damsel in distress, be the knight in shining armor, than extend my hand to lift up my brother, who I can see needs help.
Yes.
And I'm actually in a place where I'm able to help them. Let me reach out and help this boy and help this young man. Hapo hakuna bonga points. Lakini kama ni sister nice. What do you think?
Now, maybe before I answer that, let me chime in on the initial question of the solutions. Okay. Now, Chris has mentioned basically most of them, but my key would be being intentional about this whole thing.
Yeah.
The only reason why we're having this discussion that the girl child is empowered is because there's been intentional efforts to empower the girl child.
And consistency.
You know, it is from legislation, policy, institutions. How many institutions do we have for empowering the girl child?
Many.
Okay? There's FIDA, there's all of them. How many legislation are there? The Prevention on FGM, Sexual Offences Act, so many things. But I mean, how many policies can you count from the top of your head, or legislation that is there for men? But the truth is that I don't think that we really need legislation. In fact, the studies have it that there is no legislative gap or policy gap, but it is just the intentionality, the programs. I mean, how many? I recently had another radio interview about young dads, the struggles that they go through.
Yeah.
But you know, most of them said we don't have any single program. I've not found any single program for young dads. But how many programs are there for young moms? So it's about intentionality, just being very intentional about empowering. And it starts at the basic level. Father, son, okay? Father, nephew, friend to friend, pastor, congregant, those kinds of relationship. We need to start at that point.
In fact, you've talked about pastor, congregant, and I'm just curious, are we having an impact in our churches when it comes to empowering men? For me, for some reason, it always seems like women are more engaged even in churches. They have their chamas, they have their women's guild, you know, and all these other whatevers. Wazee wa kanisa wakikutana, either kuna mradi, ama tukule mbuzi, but not on matters of empowerment. Chris, talk to me.
I believe spiritually, there is a drive that has empowered men.
Okay.
But the only thing is the drive for men to go for that kind of a gathering.
Wanaume pia ni vichwa ngumu.
Exactly. The kind of a drive, right? But then also, Pastor, you realize that there are some also bad examples in our society. And it happens that the bad examples are more vocal than the good examples.
And the good examples.
Yes.
That's
and
true.
all of us. And you know, a small fault can really be magnified. By the time it gets to you as a man, you say, I don't want to go there because I don't want to be associated with failure. No man wants to associate with failure or loss. We are afraid of that. Everyone of us want to be successful.
Except supporters were
Tunawajua.
Let me not say, I don't want my show to be shut down.
Every child, boy or girl, requires to hear the voice of a man in their life. And when they don't hear that voice and go out in the world to fend for themselves, there is one very critical thing you'll see them do. It was done by President Obama, and many men have done it. You go back to your roots. Where did I come from? Even the girls, they're very good at looking for their father. Where is my father? So even if I've lived with a single mother who's given me her best, all right, at the end of the day, deep inside me, there'll be this battle that I'll want to win.
Yeah.
And the battle is, where is my identity from? If somebody tells me that I lost my father, but my father had a brother, there's a very high affinity that I will look for my father's brother. And for him, I'll claim my inheritance, because that's where my identity is, all right? But the beautiful thing that my brother said, which I support very much, is for us men who are now alive, we need to go out intentionally. Those guys who can set up policy framework and institutionalize this institution of mentorship, we need to go out and do that. And do it so vigorously. So how do we fight that back as men and claim this boy to go back into the way we do things as men?
I believe if we all take that personal responsibility and become intentional, then we'll begin to see a change in our community. That's all the time we have for Man Up this evening. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I pray that you've been able to get something. If there are topics you would want us to cover on this show, feel free to suggest them via our SMS line 20316 and WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. That's it. Do have a good evening and God bless you.